No. Wait, hang on, don't click off the video just yet, please, just let me explain. So a few months ago, Sonic Central happened, which is where we got a couple of decent announcements for upcoming Sonic games and other media and products, one of these being Sonic Colors Ultimate, which had practically everyone skeptical the moment it was shown off, although I think that kinda goes without saying, Sonic fans have been pretty skeptical about things for more than a while now. Boost forward for the next few weeks and months, and well, Colors Ultimate was shaping up to be something alright. Personally, I had stayed pretty cautiously optimistic, taking the side that, oh, the issues I have right now are probably gonna be fixed before release. Right? Boy, was I kinda wrong. Today I want to talk about Colors Ultimate specifically on the topic of why I don't think it's a good remaster, rather than reviewing the game as a whole, because I honestly don't even feel like reviewing Colors because I already have a ton of other videos on my backlog, so maybe I'll come back to it a few months from now, who knows. First things first, I am reviewing this from the perspective of someone who played the Switch version, so keep that in mind as I go along. Let's talk about the visuals because, well, graphically the game is hit or miss, mostly miss though. I like some of the updated visuals in specific levels like Aquarium Park, but man, in most other areas there is no denying how high they cranked up that brightness and glow. Seriously, Starlight Carnival takes it to the next level with that, and it genuinely started hurting my eyes at times. And wait, I found the secret ingredient! Brightness, glow, and everything wrong, saturation! If you think I'm exaggerating, look at how they massacred the rings! Sonic's face can appear more yellow than it's meant to be as well. Again, it's not all terrible, but most of the time I hardly noticed any of the visual differences. The 2D sections especially look dang near the same as the Wii version, but with less pixels. Going hand in hand, the loading times oddly take longer than the original, and it's really hard to say why because I don't feel like the Switch is less powerful than the Wii. I mean, that's a really old console, and Sonic Forces levels tend to load in just fine, but those ones are a tad bit shorter. I think it was a mixture of things, including poor optimization. Okay, well, mostly poor optimization. A lot of people love to point towards the Switch hardware itself for being too weak, but in this case, there's no way that's the case. The game uses the Blind Squirrel engine, which is built off of the open source game engine Godot, which I'm not too familiar with it myself. I believe it's mainly used by indie devs though. Funnily enough, Blind Squirrel Games actually forgot to mention Godot in the game's credits, which I don't understand how you would miss something like that, but here we are. According to data miners, the game wasn't rewritten in Godot, rather it was used mainly as a graphical backend. Heck, the game still even has the original code in the files, so as far as I understand, what may be the issue isn't the code itself, at least not entirely. Computers and most traditional consoles share many similarities, but that's just the thing, the Switch isn't a traditional console. It's more similar to mobile devices sharing ARM chips used in most smartphones. Don't quote me on that, I could be very wrong, but even still, my point is that the hardware of the Switch isn't quite like other consoles. This likely caused some graphical optimization errors, many of which people have shared rampantly online. Seizure warning before I play any of these, cause these get pretty dang wacky. Skip ahead to the timestamp on screen if you want to avoid any of it. So, yeah, I think it's safe to say the changes made weren't right for the Switch. This leads me to believe Sega may have put some crunch on them, or some other internal issues were happening at the time. Apparently, they had been having a hard time holding on to employees in 2019, but in 2020 they began to operate almost as normal again, so it's hard to say when exactly Sonic Colors began development, but I think a safe bet would be sometime in 2018 to 2020, maybe even earlier to that, who knows, I'm not really sure how remaster development works. Another thing to consider though is that Blind Squirrel Games is mostly known for helping out with development on games like the BioShock and Mass Effect collections, not so much solo work. As far as I know, they have tried to make 3 other solo projects, but all 3 ended up cancelled. But I think the biggest red flag is that Blind Squirrel Games has never worked with a mobile console before, so you can probably see where this is going. An ill-equipped dev team plus hardware they're unfamiliar with is a a recipe for disaster. I don't even know what to say about this. Honestly, it's just bizarre that Sega would even think about hiring a team that isn't in tune with all of the hardware they're going to be working to optimize the game for, but let me be clear though, as far as I know, the other versions of the game are a bit more stable apart from some save corruption glitches, but there have been some other reported glitches, not quite to the extent that the Switch version has seen though. There were so many from one particular account that people had suspicions of the clips being faked, but nope, they're real. To be clear though, you do have to actively try to get these seizure glitches to occur. Basically, if you rapidly go from one planet to another, after a while of doing that, if you enter a level, you'll probably discover a new super form. Hypersonic returns, finally! What's likely to be the issue is the game having poor memory management, so as you continue to switch planets, eventually the game gets overloaded and the rest is history. Interestingly though, it seems when you finish a level, the game does offload most of that memory, because when I tried playing another level after experiencing the glitchy effects, the only issue I had was with the boost, so again, it's very unlikely that you'll run into a graphical glitch this severe unless you're really trying. Regardless, I feel like I've been dwelling on the subject for way too long, so let's delve into the other changes and additions. First off, something I think is kinda neat, customization features. We've got purchasable boost colors, auras, shoes, gloves, and even player save icons, even though you can't have multiple save files, so that kinda defeats the point of the icons. But oh well. Looks kinda wacky using some of the items in the levels, but I like the addition nonetheless. Achievements are another thing that's new, and that's a cool addition. I always like having extra things to do in games. The only real issue I have with these is they stay on screen for an unusual amount of time, and they even show up in cutscenes for some reason. Swapping over to a smaller positive, I think the game controls a bit better than the original, though the default button mapping confuses me, but it is a lot less clunky than the original, which is a plus. Still far from perfect. Honestly, it would be a whole lot closer if the game just didn't have nearly as many 2D sections. Unfortunately, that's where my positives stop again though. The sound mixing is pretty bad at points. Cutscene dialogue is super quiet compared to the map and level themes. The sweet spot homing attack sound effect is obnoxiously loud. Occasionally I noticed that certain wisp sounds wouldn't even play, presumably because something else was happening at the same time. I'm not entirely sure, but like, you would think they would catch this in playtesting. I don't understand. Speaking of which, I found that the music remixes for the game sound decent, but a lot of them have pretty sloppy portions that sound like first drafts more than they do final versions. Sometimes it doesn't flow well, or in the case of Sweet Mountain Act 2, the beginning portion sounds to me like they were randomly pressing keys in the hopes of finding a good mix, but I'll give credit where credit is due. The rest of the track absolutely slaps. I'm not knowledgeable on the subject of music. I can tell you this much though, I like a few of the remixes, but they're flawed enough that I prefer the original version of the OST overall. I'm not really surprised about this though. Personally, I just don't like very many video game remixes, so this one is somewhat of an outlier. I would like to say this, Speak With Your Heart's remix sucks, dude. I love that song, but it just doesn't sound right in Colors Ultimate. That's another thing. I feel like with video game remixes, they tend to miss the point of the original song, and that is definitely the case with most of the tracks I don't like. Aquarium Park and Planet Wisp, for example. But that does bring me to something else. There's no toggle to switch back to the original OST in the settings, which for some reason I thought there was going to be one because I heard them say something about that. But in the Switch version at least, there's no settings for it. It's really disappointing. I don't know why they wouldn't include something like this. It just seems like such common sense. I don't know. Putting it that way makes me sound like I'm being really harsh. What I mean is, I just think a quality of life feature like that should be included in a remaster. One change I found more annoying than anything was how the laser wisp power used to wait a couple of seconds before activating, but in Ultimate for some bizarre reason it's activated near instantly, and when it does, the animation flies by so fast you can hardly see where you're going. You can hold R, and by doing so, time will stay frozen until you position yourself appropriately, but that made me realize a separate issue: the laser's reticle is super dark. It kinda feels like they applied brightness to the wrong areas in this remaster, because I genuinely thought that the game had been positioning my lasers automatically up until I noticed that. Other than that, the wisp's function is normal. Oh, and the Jade Wisp. Yeah, as I expected, it doesn't add much to the levels it's in. You can phase through specific walls with it to access small hidden areas. It's harmless, but overall pointless. I don't know what else to say about it. The last new major addition there is to cover is the absolute mess that is the rival rushes. After you've collected a certain number of red rings in a world, you'll unlock a rival rush, which is basically the same idea as the rival races in Sonic Generations, but so much more unforgiving. Seriously, the levels they choose for you to race Metal Sonic in are just not designed with races in mind. That much should be obvious, but they let Metal practically float over any hazards fast enough that you have to have the mind of a speedrunner if you even want a chance of winning one of these. Or you know what, maybe I'm just really bad at the game, I don't know, the rival rush mode annoys me, that's my point.
Finally, we can relate.
So, I don't know man, Sonic Colors Ultimate really had me hopeful. I wanted to believe that any of the poor quality graphics would be fixed when the game came out, or that the remixes wouldn't be too bad, or heck, just that this would be an okay remaster, and I would have settled for that, but it's kind of the Sonic curse at this point. I know people hate to hear it, but I think if the game was gonna turn out like this, I'd much rather have it be a port than a straight up remaster and not have the development be outsourced to a dev team that just doesn't understand the Switch's hardware. I'm not saying that to flame the developers, I'm sure they did the best they could and I appreciate some of that effort, but I gotta be fair here, it's not a great remaster. If you really think any of the things I talked about won't bother you too much, then go ahead and get the game, cause I can't stop you. Personally, I know I'll still play the Switch version just out of convenience, but I still can't help but be disappointed with how it turned out. Curse you, Sega!